streamlining the recovery process, the compliance, and the CFPB impacts. Our moderator for this session is a familiar face here at the RE3 conference, Cort DeHart, with Ajero. So, Cort, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, Nick. It's good to be back again, and good to have most of the guys that have done this before and this panel all back together. As I was looking at these pictures up here, I realized I've been in this industry longer than I realized, and a lot more gray, and now I've got reading glasses that I didn't have when I first started this. And I think all the guys here were all talking about how old some of the pictures were. But I want to give everybody just a chance to introduce themselves. We have gone over, for the last few weeks, a series of topics. Everybody had input, and we kind of built an agenda of questions that we're going to go over today based on feedback from this group here. So if we could, let's just start down, and Jerry, why don't you start and introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. Jerry Kroshus, President of PAR North America. We are a subsidiary of Odessa Auctions. We'll repossess close to 200,000 vehicles this year. We'll process about 65,000 titles. We remarket about 20,000 vehicles, and we have a skip group as well.
Great.
Okay.
Jose Mendiola. I'm with ALS Resolvion. I'm the company's president, and we're receiving anywhere from 15 to 20,000 assignments monthly. Repossess 5,000 to 7,000 units monthly, so it's not quite the 200,000 Jerry's got, but we're working our way there.
Terry Groves, Consolidated Asset Recovery Systems. We also provide very similar services, repossession through remarketing. We do, 12, 13,000 repossessions a month, I guess, and we sell a lot of those vehicles. So very similar to the other folks up there, I suppose.
Claudia Plascencia with Del Mar Recovery Solutions, and we too are a national service provider of end-to-end services for our lender clients and prospects. That includes repossessions, license plate recognition services, skip tracing, and all the way through to remarketing. We are a medium-sized company. We certainly do offer our services roundabout to both large, medium, and small lenders, and we're repossessing right about 15,000 assignments on a monthly basis. So again, in comparison to the rest, we're a medium-sized business.
I'm Scott Peters. I'm the CEO of Panelists Financial Services. We're national, and we, you do the front end, skip and remarketing as well. Maybe 25,000 plus assignments a month.
Great. All of the faces on here have been here before, with the exception of Scott. Scott's the newest person on this panel and new to the industry over the last year or so. One of the things that I've noticed from doing these conferences for years, when we first started, there was a lot of tension between the direct agents and the forwarders, and it seemed like that was always the dialogue. The direct agents didn't like the forwarders and vice versa. But over the last couple of years, I've seen a shift in that to where you don't hear that kind of language and that talk as much as you used to. Scott, since you're new, I'll start with you. What is it that Panelists is doing to help build those agent relationships and make that tension go away?
Okay. Well, thanks, Cort. Attack the new guy first. I'm a veteran of 4 months into this industry, so I'm pretty knowledgeable. So here's the way I look at it. It didn't take me very long to figure out that the agent's probably the key entity in the process, because if agent doesn't pick up the vehicle, none of us get paid, and I like to get paid. So here's the thing: you want to have the best relationship you can have with them. So let's think about kind of what we do at Panelists to kind of have the best relationship we can have. First of all, I've spent myself a good bit of time talking to agents. In fact, today I've already had a few conversations. Yesterday I had some meetings. So just as a regular course of business, listening to them. We also have an agent board that's got representation nationally, meets once a month with an agenda. We go over issues. Again, there's not much that's off the table. So that works very well. I guess some other things that we do, we have our own, we have a vendor group that deals with the agents on a day-to-day basis, listens to what they have to say, and things go both ways, and that's really, really good. I think one of the things that we've done that we've had a lot of success with that I really like, and we're going to keep doing it, we've had 3 of these agent conferences in Nashville. We're going to have it in California next year, I think, but you bring 200 plus agents out and, listen to what they have to say, and also, maybe have panels and sessions just like you're having here, And you get a lot of feedback. And at the end of the day, we also help raise some money for the RBF, which is also good. So it's, yeah, I like the relationship we're having. Can it get better? Yeah, but like what we're doing.
Jose, your company has recently combined with and created the ALS Resolvion brand, so you had two different organizations coming together. What are some of the things that you guys are doing over there that are helping build and maintain those agent relationships?
I think, and for me, I've been, I want to say, indirectly in the recovery space going on 15 or 20 years, but I've spent a lot more time in the last 5 to 7 years in it, obviously with what we do. The first thing I noticed immediately walking into the industry that there was no question about it, a disconnect between the agent community and the forwarding model. The forwarding model, doing a little bit of research on it, it's maybe a 25 to 30-year-old model that PAR started. So it's relatively fresh. I think that when you look in the totality of what's gone on, agents that are a long time in the industry, there's certainly margin issues that are going on for both the forwarders as well as the agents. The forwarding model is here to stay. At least right now, I think the agents are the good ones anyway, are starting to come to the realization that working together with the management companies is really the way to go. And on the flip side, we can put that onus of responsibility only on the agents. Certainly we can provide better information. Jotted down a couple notes here, just different skip tracing tools that allow us to drive better addresses so that they're not out there wasting their time. A little bit more specific than what Scott was saying. Scorecarding, the agent's scorecard is very important to us today so that we can make sure we might have, several hundred agents, but how do we get the work to the 20% that represent the best opportunity for us and our clients to bring a result, compliant-wise, and obviously good success rates. And then I would say most importantly also is training internally of our own team and to make sure that their communication efforts with the repo agent community is just one of respect and decorum. No different than we wouldn't want the lenders beating us over the head for information. We need to obviously respect the fact that these are small operators trying to run their businesses, and we need to help them succeed as much as possible. So,
Any other panelists want to add anything to that? I don't want to let everybody just go down on that one question, but does anybody have anything they want to add that
I
Scott
will,
or Jose
certainly.
haven't covered?
Absolutely. So, we're forwarders, we're in the middle, we're here to serve a purpose. But ultimately, the relationship that lies between the forwarder and the agent is very, very important. We realize that. We want the agent to be successful. When the agent's successful, we're successful, our lender's successful. So there are specific needs of the lender and that we need to provide, and there are specific needs to the agent that we need to provide. So to have the forwarding model to be very nimble, to adapt, to have the resources, because there's some very invaluable tools out there, not only internally from a compliance and regulations perspective, but in regards to a lot of the technology that's recently been released into the industry. So having the opportunity to be the functioning component to ensure that there is adaptability and success across the board has really allowed the agents a greater success as well. And resonating a lot of the other panels that have been going on today. And there are challenges for the repossession agency, so to be able to be the backbone and the support for those repossession agents has really come a long way in how we're able to assist them. Thank you.
Yesterday, I was in another panel discussion that MasterQ sponsored. It was a good discussion, and the topic that came up it's come up at several of these is updates and the inefficiency associated with it. I know in the MBSI platform this year, we had something like 30 million updates were processed in 1 year just in our system alone. And if you multiply that times the rest of the industry, it's a tremendous amount of effort that is being put into this so-called update process. And maybe if I could, Jerry, start with you a little bit, and if you could kind of tell us what you're seeing on the update process, what the inefficiencies are, what you'd like to see.
Sure, and we recognize that lenders are concerned about the cut and paste updates, and they want to recognize that their accounts are being worked. We think there's some great advances. Clear Plans with their routing system has been very good for us. With the full two-way integration that we have with RDN, our work gets stacked up and it works really well. So I think what it all comes down to is that everybody is we want to make sure that the vehicles are getting picked up. There's scorecards out there, so that's how we all get graded, is on scorecards. So if you get a good scorecard, you make more, you can make more money, and so forth. So we're happy with that.
Right. Terry, I know your model is slightly different than some of the others here, but you still have the same issue in dealing with updates. Have you seen anything? I know there's been talk about geo updates and whether those can help. What are you seeing in the industry, or have you been able to engage clients in any meaningful way about the relevance of some of the updates when almost everyone realizes 80% of them aren't accurate anymore?
Yeah, it's interesting. Updates kind of in some ways, it's a necessary evil, because I made the comment to our staff the other day. If we had 100% recovery rate, probably there wouldn't be that much concern about updates in themselves. But updates is kind of a broader subject, right? It's really the content that we're collecting related to the repossession or remarketing process, which includes instructions, specific task or request. Then there's, did you run the address and those type of things. And I think the challenge is on the information coming back related to things like, did you run the address or not? And, what type of information did you collect during that process when you ran the address, that we can filter back that has relevant information to the client. Now, if you're doing 10,000 repossessions or 20,000 repossessions a month, it's pretty hard to review all the notes, right? So then the question is, why do we do the notes? Well, they're there for two reasons in my mind. One is in the event that, we have, we don't pick up the vehicle, what do we do? What kind of resource do we expel to try and collect that asset and get it back? Our client wants to know, what are they getting for their money? That's one aspect of it. The other one is there is a compliance component. I need to have some historical record in the event that something goes south. In the perfect world, though, we should all just be focused on recovery, because that's ultimately the end game, right? We don't make money by doing updates. We make money by picking up the vehicle. So I think for us, we are looking at how can we simplify that process, but make it meaningful at the same time. In other words, saying I ran the address in itself may not be that meaningful. Knowing that you physically went by the address and there was data that was collected during that experience is relevant. And we do want to see that, because it may help qualify or disqualify, are we looking in the right place for that vehicle? The grass is overgrown, the house is vacant. Clearly, there's something going on there, since this is probably not the best address for running and trying to pick this vehicle up. So then, it's a matter of, well, how much of that can you filter out by collecting better and better data all the time? Kind of gets back to, why does the agent, well, how is our relationship improved with the agent? Well, the first thing is they want good quality information, right? So the better the information, the more they can optimize their business, the more efficient they can be, the more money they can make. So we kind of become the, I don't want to say the caretaker of their business, but we become that asset that helps them kind of elevate their game, whether it be related to compliance, notes, updates, how you collect the information, how do you qualify, and leverage your resources when they're out there in the field trying to do these jobs.
Scott, I know you come from a background of efficiency and bringing new processes to companies. When you came into this industry and you started experiencing this update phenomenon that goes on, what were your first thoughts looking at this as an outsider when you came in?
Well, I guess the way I look at it is, first I asked kind of the history of this update thing, because obviously it's voluminous, right? So when I asked the history, the explanation I got was, when there was a non-contingent model that we had in the industry, it was like, okay, because there was close fees, you had to kind of prove, your worth so you get the close fees, right? So I get that. When it changed to a contingent model, it seems like it stayed along. I think, there's probably some benefit to updates, like the comment's been made. I just think that maybe having less of them, or maybe spaced out a little bit, because if you talk to agents, they'll, obviously some of these aren't being done, very accurately. So I just want to make sure that we're kind of, if you're going to be more efficient, you want to say, how often are you going to really do it? Once every 3 days, or maybe once every week, or whatever, or maybe once there's a status change. I don't know, but in fact, I was having a discussion today with one of the lenders, and I get the impression that they're going to reduce, through technology, they're going to reduce the frequency of updates.
And that was my follow-up was, have any of you been able to engage your clients? Because this update process is really driven from the client saying, I need these, it's part of my SLAs. Have any of you guys been able to engage the clients in a meaningful way and talk about what the value you're really getting out of this update process? And if so, have you seen any, Scott just mentioned one, but have any of you others had any experience with these conversations with clients?
I can jump in. Starting to hear it more. I think technology is going to definitely play a big role in the efficiency of how, as we're all trying to chase margin and understand how to more efficiently run our business, this is an issue that's becoming more and more prevalent. We certainly want to spend our time on the 80% side of the equation that's going to bring us results. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of probably everybody in this room. What we don't want is somebody hired that's making very little money, that's saddled with an SLA that says chase after ALS Resolvion for updates, and whether it's a skip account or a forwarding assignment, there are complexities to each side of that equation on how frequent they should be, but I think technology is going to play a huge role. We're starting to have some client receptivity to at least acknowledging that we're probably spending just too much time chasing a wheel. It's really not going to help the process.
Anybody else want to add to that before I move on?
There is one observation. I think we all agree to this. We all talk from time to time, and the majority of the vehicles are picked up in the first 7 days, typically. So if you think about the value of the update, probably becomes more relevant as the account ages more and more. So you could probably make a fair argument that says, look, in the first 7 days, other than acknowledging your work in the account, I would say let the cards fall where they may, pick up those vehicles, the majority of them, in that first 7 days, and then focus more on what happens after that 7 days. We've got a lot of vehicles. We pick them up so fast, there's really no need for an update other than say, we got the car, right?
Right.
I mean, you're getting them right away. Some of them in the same day, some of them the next day. So on those, what is the update? I've got the car. It's been advanced to a different status in the life cycle, and let's talk about the next step in the process. But to force an update every 3 days in that first 7 days probably doesn't have very much meaning.
Or value.
Yeah.
Great. All right. The name of this topic was compliance and CFPB impact. So, as everybody in the room is acutely aware, over the last 2 years, compliance has become the focal point of most of the discussions. Most of the decisions by a lot of lenders are being driven by compliance. But we know that those regulations and compliance needs that are being pushed down on the lender by various regulatory agencies are also now being pushed down to you and ultimately down to the agents. So as heads of your businesses, how are you meeting these challenges and in some cases opportunities to differentiate yourself? How, and I'll let each one of you talk about this a little bit, how are you addressing the compliance challenges that are being pushed down to you by the client's necessities?
I'll jump in. So 3 years ago, we started a separate compliance division. We named Tim Massengill. He had 15 years of experience within our organization. We elevated him to become our vice president of compliance. We got a 10-person staff now. That's all they do. Contracts, audits, call recording, SLAs, oversee all of our policies and procedures. And then when we do get audits from banks and finance companies, which have become more frequent, so it's usually, we're getting banks coming in quarterly, and they usually spend 3 to 4 days with us. So it's very intensive, but we're well equipped to handle it. But it has changed. We get a lot of corporate support from our parent company, Car Auction Services. But yeah, they're very busy.
Right. Jose?
No question about it. We're facing a steep burden that, and don't miscategorize what I'm saying. Obviously, compliance and structure is a huge part of the industry that we'd all much prefer for repossession to be done properly than work the fine line of having some kind of liability created for the company. So the fact that the industry as a whole has seen, I want to say about the last 3 years, has really seen, even in the 5 to 7 years of me being involved in ALS, the first couple of years I did not see anything remotely close to what I've witnessed the last 2 to 3 years. Every client is spending more money on their own risk departments. They've got more personnel. Ultimately, that brings more oversight to our operations. As Jerry mentioned, we've got people coming in and out of our facilities now regularly. On the positive side, I think we've honed it to a point, and we've spent money on chief compliance officers and more people inside of our compliance department. But ultimately, the process seems to be streamlining, getting easier for us because there's only so many questions that can be asked. There are new things that are coming up, but I would venture to say that the process seems to be getting easier just because we've done it already so many times over the last 2 to 3 years.
The adjustment period's starting to kick in a
Correct.
little bit. Okay. Terry, what about you?
Yeah, I guess there's compliance from two perspectives. One is what we impose on our contractors and what they need to do for us, because that helps mitigate the risk we have. And then how we reconcile that back to our clients that are asking us to go through specific site audits, security audits. We get questionnaires that literally have, hundreds of questions. We have people come on site for, 2 to 3 days at a time. Consumes a lot of resource. And then we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars building out vendor service organizations and compliance teams. So we've seen the impact of it. I will say that as far as from what we require from the agent, I think we've been involved in working with the agent to help, again, kind of lift, how they exercise their business to help support us and our requirements back to our clients. And that's kind of a sunk cost in our business. But the cost that was probably new to the table would be more related to our internal processes and the resources we've had to apply in which we did not have necessarily dedicated resources in the past. So, compliance is a cost of business. We don't really promote it as a profit or a revenue opportunity, but it is a necessity that we have to deal with. And so, it boils back to, how do you absorb that cost? We've been doing it for quite some time, so it's kind of built into our model. But it's always a challenge to look at, how do you get the service, make it more competitive in price, but at the same time manage the expense related to compliance.
Great, thank you. Claudia?
Yes, so, a lot of these rules, regulations have been around for a really, really long time. If anything, they have become more imperative and obviously a lot louder in the industry. So, again, as I'd mentioned earlier, it's really important to have an internal compliance department. Our team is fabulous in having the resources and the technology across the board to be able to pass that compliance regulations onto our lenders to better protect our lenders. Nicely enough, Del Mar becoming incorporated in 2011, we were able to build that into our infrastructure. So in building the model accordingly, we have built the price structure to be very fair as well. So our foundation is built, and in regards to that, ultimately we're looking to protect our lender clients and ultimately be the resource to assist the agents in the industry who do not have the ability to bring in those resources internally themselves.
Great, thank you. Scott, I know you're new in this one, but.
I'd say what they said. But then I guess I would say, so I get credit for all those. But then I would say, I guess that, like a lot of industries, and, they've learned to deal with compliance by understanding that their core kind of competency is not compliance, okay? And so I think if we can look for opportunities to maybe somebody that can do it better and cheaper than us, that could maybe help our industry. There's entities out there already that can, do it better and cheaper than we can. So any of those opportunities to maybe BPO it, don't want to use the word outsource, kind of want to maybe take a look at those.
Sure.
There's options. There's some good options already out there.
Yep. So the one thing that everybody mentioned was the cost associated with it. It either comes out of your profits or it comes out of some other part of your business that has to suffer. Have any of you been able to have meaningful conversations or success in talking to your clients about this cost that's been pushed down? And have you been able to talk clients into recognizing that and maybe adding any value to that? And Jerry, I'd ask you maybe to start.
Yeah, well, the problem is their costs are going up as our costs are going up because they're sending more people out there, have more audits. So we haven't been successful really per se in increasing or getting a price increase. We're trying, but it's just not happening right now.
Right.
Yeah, I would say I would have thought 2015, I would have seen more movement. In fact, sitting on this panel last year,
Same question last year.
The same question happened, and I think I kind of said the same thing. I thought that would be the year. Only difference is this year we've already started to feel towards heading into the fourth quarter that there are some discussions with some of our key clients already that are recognizing it. Tough challenges, as Jerry mentioned, you've got a cost structure that's rising on their side, it's rising on our side. They're looking at their recovery rates, and some bean counter can sit in the back room and say, your results are not suffering, why should I pay more?
Right, right.
Yeah, I think until the market rights itself through some event, right? So, for example, there's some type of litigation or other activity that kind of highlights the fact that the cost is disproportional to the service that's required. People can no longer perform the function. At that point, maybe we'll see some movement. But right now, I think it's looked at as it's a sunk cost of business. They have a sunk cost of business. We have a sunk cost of business.
Right.
I absolutely agree with what Terry has said as well. You know, it really depends on what the lender is looking for and what the impact to the forwarding model is going to be. You know, ultimately, the lender and the agent is getting a great deal of compliance technology through our services. So the costs associated to the lender is very minimal versus going out on their own and attempting to put all of these compliance technology pieces together themselves in-house.
And Scott, we'll let you off this
I
one
was gonna
since
say,
you're
I'm
new.
sorry.
You save it for next year, right?
I'm starting to feel like the last tier of the recovery process. So,
Yeah, you're tier 7 down there, right? So, one of the things that I hear a lot in the compliance discussion is this term compliant agent. Can anybody offer a definition of what that means to them?
Well,
Well, go ahead.
okay, so a compliant agent is a knowledgeable agent, you know, an agent that is aware of what is absolutely necessary to stay within legal terms and recover the vehicle for us and for the lender. So again, if we can be a ladder to that, an extension to the lender in regards to the compliance and educate each other and move forward progressively, that's what a compliant agent is.
Okay. Anybody else have any kind of
I would also
minimums,
add,
I guess?
well, I'd also add, obviously, that one that's vetted and trained.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, there's a training component in there that's very important. You know, for example, every one of us, well, except for us, maybe, has had wrongfuls, okay? And so, I mean, there's some that you just cannot control because somebody does something that's kind of outside the process, right? So that if there's, you know, that's kind of one to me that I guess I would look at the training component of it.
In training, does anybody else have any thoughts on agent training and how they're handling it or things that they look for in agents?
Well, I'd like to say that I think it's compliance and what is a compliant agent, I think is an interesting question. If you ask our clients, I think you'll get different answers.
Right.
Right? We have some clients that say, look, we want you to make sure that they've got a pandemic, procedure and that they've got a disaster recovery plan and that they're, we're looking for specific felonies and drug tests and so on and so on. And you have other clients that say, well, do they have insurance? Okay, they do. Well, it sounds pretty good to me, So I think you've got two things going. You've got a couple things going on here. One is that within the industry, there's really no true standards by which repossession agents are defined. I mean, Florida has some standards, and they've got some licensing requirements, but then you go to another state, and it's totally different. There's nothing at all. So there's no baseline to really go by. So we're kind of creating this as we go. I think our clients are pushing us to demand more from our contractors, to be more thoughtful of what the process, what the impact is as we push information back and forth between ourselves and a large number of small mom-and-pop operations. They're leading on us to come up with the solution for the most part. They're giving us guidelines to fit within, but then we have to deliver. So I think each of us is probably taking a slightly different approach depending on the client mix that we have, depending on, our business model. I know that for us, we're probably demanding so much. Our contract with the agent this year, I can tell you, is probably 24 pages. Okay, and a lot of that's got to do with the SLA and the compliance requirements and security of information and and so on and so on. So our contract 10 years ago, it didn't look like that. I guarantee it. We had 5 pages or 4 pages, and that was probably deep at that point. So it's changing, it's evolving. I don't think there is a well-defined standard. That's part of the problem.
Jerry, is there anything on like a minimum thing that you look for when you're looking for an agent to bring a new agent on board?
Yeah, we have a checklist, but basically it's tenure in business, properly licensed and insured, trained and certified either through RISC or RSIG, physical lot security, information security, and then lastly, reputation. We put a lot of emphasis on that.
I think you were ready for that question.
Pardon me?
You were ready for that
Yes,
when
I
you had
was.
your list at the ready.
I did.
Anybody else? Any other thoughts on this? Because I get this a lot from agents is, what is compliance? They tell me I need to be compliant, but what the heck does that mean?
Yeah, just the bar, unfortunately, as Terry said, and I kind of will echo the sentiment that was just said by Terry and Jerry. The bar is set internally. We are the company ultimately that is managing that agent relationship on behalf of the client. So we're setting the bar. Obviously meeting SOWs, being able to effectively fill out any vendor package or any vendor process that each one of us may have. Even if there's a nuance, I would say that for the most part, we're probably all circling around the same general areas. And then if you go either one step further and have agent certifications, or at the very least during your agent scoring model or scorecard, that you might give weighted points towards any type of certifications or trainings that might be different one versus another.
Another recent trend over the last few years is the LPR technology. It's probably 5 years old now, maybe 6 or 7, I guess, actually. Maybe 5 years where the forwarders were involved heavily in the LPR model. It's created challenges for some people. It's created opportunities for others. Maybe if each one of y'all could talk a little bit about how you deal with the LPR opportunities and your strategies in general. And I'll start this time down there, Scott, with you instead of the other end.
Well,
So.
I think, obviously it's another source to find a vehicle. Obviously, it's effective. At some point, I think you got to look at, cost benefit. But I think everybody's kind of doing it, and it's finding vehicles. But I guess my point would be, it's but one data point.
Right.
I mean, that in conjunction with other things probably makes it even more effective. But
Yep.
obviously, it's a great tool and needed in the industry.
Yeah. Claudia, what
It is.
about Del Mar?
Absolutely. It is a great technology resource. So happy to see it come to fruition, and it's awesome. We love it. I know our lenders benefit from it, and we do utilize it quite heavily inside of our corporation as well. So to be without it in these days, in this era, would certainly be an impact, and a negative impact to anybody's business. If any lender does not have the opportunity to use it, that is certainly not something that they want to go into 2016 with, because it certainly is a benefit to the increase in recovery ratios and success.
Right. And Terry, I know from talking with you previously that your model is a little bit different, or your thoughts on LPR are a little bit different. Maybe you could share that with the
It
folks.
is. Again, I agree, it is a tool. It's one of many different tools that are available. It's an interesting technology. It has a fit. But at its core, it's just one aspect of what we look at or do. I mean, the reality of it is that we really look at, when do you deploy these technologies? When is the best time to leverage LPR or SCIP or, different databases that you might be tapping into? We've got a lot of information we like to pull to the front of the process, because our goal is we'd rather pick up the car on the first pass than figure out a way to do it better later downstream in the process, right? So we're looking at many different ways that we approach that problem, whether it be LPR data that we pull upstream, or if it's something else. So I think it's an interesting technology. We don't hang our hat on it, but it has some uplift. So, you deploy it at the appropriate time. It's a great tool.
So I'll change it up a little bit, Jose. So you've watched it from the beginning all the way to now. Has your initial thoughts of what it would be and where we would be 4 or 5 years later, how does your kind of initial thoughts about LPR in now reality, if you can maybe go back in the time machine and think about that?
It's certainly, look, it's leveraging millions of license plates that are being scanned monthly, and to leverage that against a database will certainly bring recoveries. The question in, I think, a lot of people's mind is how quickly to deploy it. There's a cost to the process. So does it work as well in the forwarding stage versus the skip stage because of the cost of what's involved? Are you able to find the cars through other traditional means that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have found these cars because of LPR? But at the end of the day, there's certainly lift that happens. If you manage on a vintage basis any portfolio, you will get more recoveries out of it. It's more a question of timing, really. For me, it's really understanding what the best use of it from not only a cost standpoint, but in the life cycle of the loan, how quickly to use it.
Right. Jerry, would you agree with that, or do you have anything you want to add? Or?
Yeah, no, it's been a huge part of our success in recent years, and we jumped in with both feet a couple years ago. We do have and it's increased our staffing, so we have a night crew. We have about 5 people that work all the way through, so we're 24/7. We have a weekend crew. We have 5 people employed on that, so it's helped us, but it's also increased our overhead.
Okay. So let me ask this. So we were talking about compliant agents earlier. Does the fact that an agent has or doesn't have cameras, does that affect your decision in bringing on new agents?
Well, it depends the type of business you're talking about, I guess. I mean, if it's LPR-specific business, yeah.
Right. Yeah, if you're
Yeah,
talking about an
but-
LPR-specific agent, of course they
Right,
need to be. But just in general, when you're looking at a new agent and you're looking at a scorecard that Jerry has or criteria, is the fact that they're running LPR cameras, does that factor into?
I want to mention that the fact that an agent may have LPR cameras does not vet them and automatically make them a compliant agent or somebody you want to do business with. I mean, we We handle every agency, no different because they may have LPR cameras on their trucks versus the ones that don't. They do need to go through the vetting process, and the hope there is that if they pass, of course, we're trying to leverage a network. And for argument's sake, if just to mention DRN, because we're a DRN shop, if they've got 400 to 500 agents that are out there, then in order to leverage that, what they call scan density, you've got to go through the process of making sure all 400 or 500 are on your network.
Right.
And if you vet them, that you've gone ahead and you've gone through that vetting process, and you just haven't opened up the Wild Wild West to just any agent just because he has cameras.
Great. Anybody else? Any thoughts on that?
I agree with Jose. It's absolutely true. You know, vetting an agent has nothing to do with their cameras or not. It's absolutely a benefit when they have the cameras. It's actually a cost to them as well. So having a camera or not does not make a good or non-compliant agent, but it's certainly, you know, something that we have both of. We have agents that have cameras and agents that don't.
Okay. I'm going to go back to another definitional question, because I think there's terms that we use in the industry that have multiple meanings to different people. One that strikes me is, and I remember talking about this years ago at an event with Chase, it's the voluntary surrender. And somebody gave the example of calling a debtor, and the debtor said, yeah, come get my blank car. And so the agent, the lender said, well, that's a voluntary. He asked us to come get it. It was really a threat. When you get voluntary assignments, can any of you talk about what voluntary means to you and what it should mean? And then how do you convey that down to the agent? Because I know everybody has different definitions of that, and it affects the price point of the recovery.
Yeah, again, it kind of depends, where you're looking at this from. If you're forwarder or an agent, you kind of would love to have, everything set up, address, phone number, contact, even have a, meeting set up, keys, all that. You can just go up at a certain time, you have a appointment set up, pick it up, that's voluntary. But I think that sometimes that definition gets, changed a little bit, maybe depending, again, on who's looking at it and how they're looking at it. I mean, nothing's perfect.
Right.
I wonder, I kind of poll the rest of you. What do y'all see with your voluntaries most of the time? Are they clean voluntaries where everything agrees, or?
No, not always. We would love to see in a perfect world that there are keys, person ready to hand over the keys. It's a friendly surrender, but that's not always the case. Understanding as well when we have the agents run and the person, has the vehicle locked behind the gate, they've refused to answer the door, they're not turning over the keys, and reporting that information back to the lender saying, hey, they're not accommodating us to pick up the vehicle. And this is really not a voluntary anymore. We really need to turn this into an involuntary. So understanding when and the timing effect of a voluntary and when to turn that into an involuntary is really, really important. So the communication between the agent and the forwarder is imperative, as is the information being sent back from the agent to the forwarder to the lender, because it is not always the case as the lender would wish it to be the voluntary that they had hoped it would be when they hung up the phone. It does change during the process, from the time that it's assigned over to us to the time the agent gets to the location.
Yeah, so there's a time component. Everybody can have the
is.
best intentions that it was voluntary and it still not be a voluntary.
Right.
So,
Well, I half jokingly say, do we even get voluntaries? I mean, usually our clients, if they have a voluntary, they're going to find a way to do that pretty easily. But I think the question is, are we getting things assigned as a voluntary inappropriately, right?
correct, yeah.
And we do see that from time to time, but it's not a big percentage of the things that we touch. There are some people that either purposely or just didn't know better will assign something out that's truly not a voluntary. Go pick this up, but we don't know where it is, obviously that can't be a voluntary, right? So it's a small percentage of our business. Sometimes it's inconvenient, sometimes there is some confusion. But you work with a client, you work it out.
Right. So as a reward for coming up here and answering all these questions, I'm going to give you one that's kind of near and dear to all of your hearts. Let each of you talk a little bit, we got about 4 or 5 minutes left, about the benefits of forwarding. What is it that makes forwarding work for you guys and your clients?
I'm going to go. Well, first off, you can consolidate your vendor management process. So instead of dealing with one person, you're dealing with 800. Instead of dealing with 800 plus recovery agents, you're dealing with one point of contact. Also, there's operational efficiency, there's compliance, there's LPR. We stroke a huge check every month for LPR that our customers benefit from. So it's a value-add service for them. And we're real excited about what's happening with some of the advances with the geo-coding and with ClearPlan.
Great.
Yeah, I think as a whole, the management concept is, from a technological standpoint, is out in front. We're all trying to manage our businesses better. So hopefully you're bringing a less complicated process to your potential client. There's no question the compliance burdens and what's happening out there today are making it more difficult for them to go one-on-one to an agent community that could be spread across the United States. So leaning on a couple of companies, I think, makes a lot of sense. Economies of scale, you can leverage, a national network as opposed to, again, going to all four corners. NOI information goes out much faster. I mean, and I can only speak to well-run companies that do it and do it right, because there are many managed companies out there that don't necessarily deliver as promised. So it's important that if you bring that model to your prospective client, that you do deliver. And I think efficiencies are a huge part of what we can bring, and obviously performance. I mean, we're all driving thousands of assignments into the marketplace, and any single client that might have a few hundred, when they pick up the phone and say run an address, it doesn't carry the same weight as somebody that's running, repossessing 200,000 cars in the marketplace on an annual basis.
Right.
So, we get asked this question from time to time. Should I do forwarding? Should I go direct? And clearly, it's a business decision at the end of the day for each of our clients. And we have both. But the reality of it is that times they are changing, right? And I think that our clients, we're seeing a trend to move more towards a forwarding model because they want to be a little bit further away from the problem. I think they prefer to be an arm's length from the repossession activity. The reality of it is it's not a very pretty piece of the business. If you're originating loans, you'll be known as the guy who collects the car. It's really just, they're not really well aligned. We have got, I will tell you that, one of the big things, I've heard a couple different things up here. One was the efficiency you gain by, taking advantage of these outsourced services to redeploy resources internally, that type of thing. One of the other ones that we run into, of course, the compliance demand is so great. A lot of the agents really can't do it. It's certainly not on a national basis. But then the other one is sustainability. I will tell you that one of the biggest challenges our clients have is when an agent does something inappropriate. And all of a sudden, we now have some type of activity which has a cost associated to it, whether it be an actual litigation that takes place or some type of resolution that doesn't go through the legal process. You have a client, an agent that loses a $25,000 vehicle, try and collect $25,000 from an agent. I hate to tell you, these small businesses, that's a big chunk of change to write that type of check. We do it every day. And if we need to do it, we do it. I don't want to do it every day, but when we have to do it, we do it. We have the sustainability, the wherewithal, and the financial resources to back issues when they come up. So those are some of the things that we see and some of the reasons why our clients kind of lean towards, I guess, the forwarding model, you might say.
Absolutely. So I agree with everything that has been said so far. It's absolutely true. However, when you look at lenders' needs, lender types vary from region to region, from portfolio types. So having the ability for each one of these lenders to have somebody to fit their specific needs is of utmost importance. So not only can we manage the assignments individually and as a whole, but to manage a full network of agents on a national basis, as Terry has just mentioned as well, is just a huge resource for these lenders to be able to have at their fingertips. So, ultimately having the ability to go back to a specialty type service, if you would, and that's no different than any other industry, is having a specialty type service to fit in with the formula of each segment of the processes. So that's what we're feeling with the forwarding model in which we provide.
Right. I guess I just echoed a couple folks said. I mean, obviously, if you're trying to make that decision, again, it's a business decision. But if you think about it, just from a resource standpoint, sources, technology, systems, et cetera, I think the forwarder's got obviously an advantage, and it is more efficient to go to one versus many, like Jerry said. So I think, the advantage there. Obviously, there's a big need for the agent in the process. The question is whether, you would go directly to them or use somebody that may have a little bit better chance at managing it for you.
Super. Well, I think we're about out of time. I really want to thank each of you, and I want to echo something that Jose said about well-managed companies. I've had the experience of working with all of you in your companies, both at DRN and now at MBSI, and I can tell the audience just on personal experience that these guys do represent very well-run companies. They've all been in the business a long time, and they do a great job. So I want to, if you could, give them a round of applause for their participation today, and we're all done.